She was told she was too small, too skinny, too frail to survive against real competition. And then she pulled up from the logo, and the entire sport of women's basketball changed forever. This is the real story of how a little girl from Iowa turned a piece of paper full of childhood dreams into the greatest scoring record college basketball has ever seen. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Caitlin Clark became the most powerful force in the history of the women's game. Welcome back to Basketball Daily. Every legend starts somewhere small, and Caitlin's story starts with a piece of paper her mother still keeps. Back in 2nd or 3rd grade, she wrote down her dreams in little bubbles on that page. 2 of them stood out: earn a basketball scholarship and one day play in the WNBA. There was also something about getting a dog, but let's focus on the basketball part, because that's the part that came true in the most spectacular way imaginable. From the very beginning, competitiveness was baked into her. Whether it was soccer, softball, track, or basketball, she wanted to be the best at everything, and she wasn't afraid to fail along the way. Her parents never told her she couldn't do something. They just let her get back up every time she got knocked down. That mindset became the foundation of everything that followed. For years, she juggled multiple sports, but everything changed once high school hit. She kept splitting time between soccer and basketball until after her sophomore year, when she made the call to drop soccer completely and pour everything into the game that was clearly her future. That's also when college recruiters started paying serious attention. Here's a story that shows just how obsessive her work ethic really was. One night before a soccer game, instead of resting, she snuck into the gym, grabbed the shooting gun, and put in a full workout until her shirt was soaked through with sweat. Her soccer teammates were stunned. This girl had to go run around a field for 90 minutes right after draining herself in a shooting session. But that was just who she was. She always wanted to be in the gym. She grew up tagging along to her older brother's practices before she could even shoot a 3, and her dad, who was her very first coach, spent countless hours rebounding for her in the driveway. Speaking of her brothers, they shaped her competitive fire more than almost anyone. They were her biggest supporters and, in her own words, 2 of her biggest haters, always ready to humble her after a rough shooting night. There's even a story about a childhood fight so intense that her brother ended up needing his head stapled back together at a walk-in clinic after she launched him into a wall corner during a snow day standoff in the basement. Rough, but that competitive edge never left the family. That edge only got sharper because she spent so much of her childhood playing against boys, all the way up until 6th grade, in both basketball and soccer. Her parents simply couldn't find girls' leagues competitive enough for her, so she held her own against boys who were bigger, faster, and stronger. She never once questioned it. Many of those same boys are still some of her closest friends today, and she'll happily remind you she could beat plenty of them one-on-one. Losing, though, was a different story entirely when she was young. She hated it so much she would cry, and she got in actual trouble at school for how badly she wanted to win, even during ordinary PE class games. It took years of maturing to learn how to balance that fire, but she said outright that some of the toughest losses of her career, including a brutal upset loss in the round of 32 her sophomore year, ended up fueling the version of her that became a champion-level competitor. Now, let's talk about the signature weapon, the Logo 3. It wasn't something she leaned on early in her career. It developed as her strength grew, especially heading into her sophomore year, when her legs and arms got noticeably stronger. She'll tell you her shooting power comes from her legs, not her arms, which is part of why her range extends so far beyond the arc. Growing up watching Steph Curry certainly didn't hurt either. What started as an evolving part of her game became the signature shot that fans and opposing crowds alike now hold their breath for every single time she crosses half court. Choosing where to play in college wasn't easy. She was torn between Notre Dame, a program with deep personal meaning to her, and her home state school, Iowa. In the end, something pulled her back home. She wanted to represent her state and bring the program back to a Final Four for the first time since 1993. That challenge, rebuilding a proud program that hadn't reached the top in decades, was exactly the kind of mission she couldn't walk away from. The crowds tell their own story of how much everything changed. Her freshman year arrived during the pandemic, when arenas sat completely empty. By her sophomore year, The arena still had curtains up to shrink capacity for smaller crowds. By her junior and senior seasons, those curtains never came down again, and tickets became nearly impossible to find. Watching that transformation from an empty gym to a sold-out arena roaring before every national anthem is something she says she never takes for granted. And it wasn't just about basketball anymore. Her presence started reshaping local economies around game days, from hotel prices to restaurant lines to ticket resale markets, an effect some have jokingly nicknamed Clarkonomics. She said it's strange to fully process at only 22 years old, but she hopes that same economic wave keeps lifting women's basketball across the entire country long after she's gone. Physically, she transformed too. Early clips from her freshman year show a noticeably thinner, almost fragile frame compared to the chiseled athlete she became by her senior season. Hours in the weight room turned a skinny kid who once got dismissed as too small into one of the most physically battle-tested guards in the country, even while still being one of the fastest and, notably, having unusually large hands that help her control and fire off passes with elite precision. Through all of it, she's stayed remarkably grounded, crediting her coach for letting her simply be herself while still pushing her relentlessly to keep improving. And she's leaned harder each year into the idea that this is a team sport, that she doesn't have to do everything herself, and that some of her proudest moments come not from a scoring record, but from watching her teammates finally get the recognition they've earned too. Eventually, the all-time scoring record fell, and by her own account, it was a relief to finally set it aside and focus purely on team goals heading into one final March Madness run. When it came time to decide between one more year of college eligibility and entering the WNBA draft, she chose to close the book on her college career with no regrets, wanting one last unclouded season with her teammates rather than lingering uncertainty about whether each game might be her last. From a folded piece of paper with a scribbled childhood dream to selling out arenas across an entire country, Caitlin Clark's journey is proof that relentless competitiveness, brutal losses, and an unshakable love for the game can rewrite the future of an entire sport. If this story hit you the way it hit us, smash that like button, subscribe to Basketball Daily, and drop a comment telling us which part of her journey surprised you the most. We'll see you in the next one.